Hello and welcome back to the channel. It's Mark from PowerSonic and Apprentice 1-to-1. Today we have an exciting consumer unit installation. I'm not going to go on about that too much now because I want to cover it later on the video when we're out at the site. But I am just prepping it, so I thought I'd show you what I do and some of the software and equipment we use to run the business and also keep on top of Apprentice 1-to-1. I've had questions about that before. Since coming back after Christmas, we've had about 800 DMs across social media to do with the job roles I share on Apprentice 1-to-1, so it is a task keeping on top of all of that, and I utilise an iPad and my phone and other such bits I'm going to show you behind me now. But before we get into all of that, let's look at this consumer unit because it's a new one on my channel. So this one's from M2, which is a brand that's primarily sold by CEF. We'll talk about the actual product itself when we're installing it, but points of note straight at the start is to do with the double screws there on the main switch and the fact that these RCBOs are termed as double pole on the CEF website. Again, I think that's more single pole with switch neutral, but that's where it was actually listed. I did mention on the last video actually that the Illusion board, or it could be the video before the last one, is single pole and switch neutral, but having spoken to Darren Staniforth, that's not actually the case. They are solid neutral. I'd misunderstood the literature there that came with that Illusion board, so my bad, my mistake. They are single pole solid neutral. Other thing I like about this is the buzz bar, so it's fixed in place and the RCBO simply slot onto it, so you can't get a misinsertion of these where you might miss the buzz bar in the cage clamp. And again, you get a nice cover there which has the torque values for the products as well, which is a nice touch, so that's easy to understand. We've gone for this one because it's compact, but I'll explain that on site. You'll see when we come to install it. I had to have a hunt around and this was the only one that would really nicely fit, which is why I've gone for it. You'll note my little printer down there, so that's a little thermal printer, and we use those to do our warranty seals. So just lift this out the box and drop it on top here and have a little talk about that. So you'll see I've stuck the sticker on the front there ready with the date of installation. But I also put in the little box another one of these labels that we stick across the front cover once we screwed it down, so we then know if anybody's been inside here messing about. You'll see under the lid there's a space here for the SPD. That's not come as yet, but when you see this getting installed out on site, that will be there, so you can see that going in as well. It's just not come with the delivery as yet. Got my little set of numbers there that you might have noticed on the neutral fly leads. So that's always handy because, again, if we have a quick look, and we'll talk about this a bit more when I install it, but there's not really much numbering going on up there with it being compact. So I did want to make sure everything was clearly labelled, ready to go. But we'll talk a bit more about that on site. In the box you get a little circuit chart, instructions, and then your label sheet comes on the other side of the instructions, so that's a nice bit of environmental friendliness there, making use of all components coming in the kit. I like that. Again, these are sort of 20-25 quid, so they're not low cost compared to the Illusion and Fuse box, but we were going for this because of its compact size, remember, so we're kind of tied. You'll notice the QR codes on these, that links into our software. This one as well, I'll show you a bit of that in a second, and again out on site. But just to speak quickly about the software I use, so you'll see there the Napit desktop's all opened up. I've pre-filled in the circuit details on this one because we know what's going in on the install, and we've already done any ICR. Do need to input the data. This is just how it pre-populates as standard, so some of these values have come straight in, but obviously once we come to install it, we'll repeat that test process anyway, so you know that can be done after the fact. But I primarily work off the desktop. Do also have the iPad Pro, which all my guys have, so we can access jobs, and you'll see here this job's open already. I've created an asset within it. I'm not going to open the specific job. Well, actually, I'll create some editing for myself. We will do. So obviously I'll have to blare out the address and such, but this is the ServiceMate software, and again you can adjust all of your billing, you can change what you're charging, schedule your job, assign assets, which you'll see I've done here. So we have that consumer unit, we know where it's installed, I've put the address in, the date it's going to be installed, and then a photograph of it as well, and that relates to the QR code you will have spotted on the front here. I'll show you that being scanned in a minute with my phone, but yeah, that's the ServiceMate software on there. I do also have the Fast Test Mobile on here, and if we quickly open that up for editing, again you'll see we can go to the testing section and the board and circuit details, you'll see they're all pre-populated there because I've assigned this job to me. When I go out to site, it can all be filled in really quickly. So we're trying to speed things up for people out on site, get the test results in with as little hassle as possible, make things nice and simple, and then that can be sent back for me to review at the office on the desktop. The latest tool I've got, I guess, is the Galaxy Z Fold 3. So this is a smartphone and a tablet all in one. You'll see there I've just unfolded it, so it does open out as a little tablet as well. Tend to use Instagram on this, and I would be LinkedIn on the iPad, and then on the desktop would be Twitter. And when I'm trying to get back to people on DMs, that's the way I approach it. It's just faster to keep them open as I drop the jobs out and then get back to people as quickly as possible and clear that. Otherwise it builds up. Having told you there's kind of like 800 DMs that come in. Speed is of the essence sometimes. But I've opened up the camera app here. If I do that and then click on the link, you'll see that takes us to this is what an actual consumer would see if they scan that QR code. So it shows you a picture of that, and we will change this for when it's installed, of course. That's just a picture I've put on for now. They can report an issue, or they can click the phone icon at the top and it will ring us. But if you click on report an issue, you can describe what's wrong, attach any images, and then submit the issue, and that comes straight to us. So in the future, if the customer's got a problem and there's going to be an EV charge point installed on this, that last breaker in the board, we'll speak about it on the install itself, is for an EV charge point. Say it wasn't working or they wanted to report an issue with it, we have those QR codes on those as well. We take a picture, a couple of clicks on the phone, and we get that information straight onto our job scheduling, and we can assign an engineer to go out and look at it. So streamlining that process so people don't have to ring you up when they want to report problems, and you can action and schedule them really easily with some information for the engineers as well. Usually a picture, if something's smashed, broken, tripped, whatever. Picture speaks 1,000 words. So yeah, that's what we do. We'll jump out to site now. I think I've gone over that enough at the outset. We'll probably pop a time lapse on the consumer unit thinking about it. I'll talk through some of the things I like and don't like about that board when we're installing it, just to show you now what we're actually facing. I'll pop a picture up here and maybe another one up there if I move to the middle of the screen to show you where this is going, and you'll see it is a pretty cramped spot. It's at the top of a kitchen cupboard with very, very limited space and on also very difficult place to access. So I might get Matthew up doing this one because he's 6'5" and he can reach the top of kitchen cupboards without steps. So that might be one for him, we'll see. But whatever, I'll pop it on a time lapse, we'll talk through it, I'll voice it over, and then we'll come back to look at what we've done at the end. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, thumbs up, thumbs down, let me know what you think. Let's get on with it. So we have a lovely meter isolator switch here, well, consumer unit isolator switch, meter isolator switch, tails isolator switch, whatever you want to call it. 80 amp fuse. We can turn this off and go and swap that consumer unit now, and I will show you that getting done. So we've got the Milwaukee pack out light all set up, giving us a bit of light up there. That's the board we're changing. You can tell I'm really looking forward to getting up there and sorting this out. Got all my gear ready down on the floor. We're good to go. Let's get this stripped out and in progress. So you'll see here I'm using my little Amazon special electric screwdriver. It's a push drive, which is always useful. And stripping out what we've got. We've already done an EICR on this one, so we're pretty confident the wiring's in good order and we shouldn't have any gremlins aside from what we find inside this box. And really it's not too bad. There's been an extension made by the British Gas Hive installers where they've swapped the central heating over onto the RCD side of this board. But again, they've used crimp through connectors. The Hager MCB was a little bit of a strange one, but there you go. I'm just trying to straighten out the cables here to give me a fighting chance of dropping them into this M2 consumer unit. I've cut a lot of the cuttage out because my elbows just ended up in the way, but you can see here I've got the cables into the board. I'm just fixing it back onto the wall surface. There was some pipes directly behind here which was annoying, so I got to be a little bit careful with the fixings. Going first with a screwdriver and just make sure there's no pipe work there is my best tip, and we had to miss the top right corner one out because there was a pipe directly behind it. So I've secured that a little bit lower down behind the SPD just to get a second fixing in to help a little bit with securing this unit to the wall. you know, sometimes you've got to work with what you've got. You can't go drilling through pipes, so that's the situation I was in. But again, using the washers and the countersunk screws with the little caps that you can get, a screw fix special there. That's a nice tip because it gives you a smooth surface. And yeah, just got the earths away there first and foremost. There is a couple of cables that needed extending, and I'm using the new Wago straight through connectors. You can just push these straight on the ends. Some people don't realise, they think you have to lift the levers up, but they will push in to get your connections made. So I'm just stripping some of those away there. I think there was 3 circuits in total that needed a little bit of extending. And because this is a compact consumer unit, the labelling inside it is a bit limited, so I'm popping cable ID numbers on every conductor and the CPCs as well, just so they're a little bit easier to identify when we come to testing. So as you know, if you've watched my videos in the past, you'll know that I dress boards away first and then come to testing them later on, just so I can experience firsthand what somebody might find when they're doing an EICR, and if there is anything that needs adjusting to make that a little bit easier, I can do it at this stage rather than have them cursing the last electrician to work on this board. Obviously this is a tricky one to dress neatly because I can't see head on exactly what I'm doing. It's a really tight corner. It's not coming across on camera that well, but I've got my head on an angle just to fit it in above the top of these kitchen cupboards to try and as neatly as possible dress this one away. But as I've said before on other videos, I'm not a believer of extending cables just to get a neat finish. It's an extra termination that you don't really need. So I won't be doing that again on this one. So you can see I'm just trying to straighten the conductors off, get them all labelled up and in the right order. I've already had to abandon my plan from earlier in the video where you saw I'd pre-made off this consumer unit with the RCBOs, because the way the cables came out of the ceiling wasn't in the orientation that I expected that they would be. So this is to give me a bit of extra length into this new board. I've had to shuffle things around a little bit. So best laid plans and all that, sometimes it doesn't quite work how you envisage. But we're getting the CPCs with the nice 3mm earth sleeving all covered up and labelled up as well along the way. So I'm just working across all these cables, getting them in the order that I want, straightened as best I can and marked up with the little number wrap around tape that I use. This works pretty good. And again, you can see me just extending. This was one of the ring final cables, there just wasn't quite enough on it, so pop it up out the way and extend them a little bit. It gives you an easier time of things. So I think I'm just about there now with the labelling up. The cable's all straightened off. I think this is the last one of the CPCs, and again, make sure you're bending over your ends on these when you are going into the earth bars. Most of the manufacturers say anything under 1.5mm you need to double over if you're going into the earth and neutral bars. So you can see I've got the DIN rail and buzz bar all there ready to go. Just get that dropped in and fasten the SPD back. Now obviously because I've changed the layout of the RCBOs, I've taken all of those off and I'm going to pop them in one at a time and dress the circuits away as I go, just to try and give me a little bit of a better chance of getting a neater finish. I thought at the time this is probably the best way to approach it. So you can see me looping the conductors over into the top of the RCBOs, trying to get them in as neatly as possible. I've got the Nipex strippers there because it gives me a little bit of a easier time getting in rather than using the croppers, especially on the smaller cables. It's easy to nip a little bit too tight when you're in a tight corner, so I thought I'd utilise those. So yeah, that's the first 2 circuits. We had the heating circuit up front, which was basically the new hive, and then a couple of lighting circuits dropped in. Again, apologies for my elbow being in the way. It's that's why I cut out a lot of the content from earlier on showing the strip out of the board, because it just ended up me being in the way of everything. You see I'm dressing these away now, trying to get the ID tags to make sure they're staying on. Obviously the labels that are on the neutral fly leads for the RCBOs, they're all wrong now, so they're going to have to come off at the end as well. And just a point of note, as you'll have seen earlier in the video, I have got a point of isolation away from this consumer unit and it is locked off. So that's perfectly safe with everything here. It's always nice when you've got that ready to go rather than having to get in touch with a DNO or get the customer to contact the meter provider to come and make an isolation for you or put you an isolating switch in. It was a nice find. And these M2 boards are pretty good when you're in a tight corner. This is obviously, you know, the wiring room is going to be limited because of the space I'm working in. It's not a a downfall of the product from M2 at all. I wanted a small and compact board, and in the circumstances this turned out pretty good with the mini RCBOs, so it's as much wiring room as possible. And again, it came together pretty nice, to be fair. I was quite happy with the end result. They're not always going to be a work of art, as I said on the video before last, I think. This is just what happens when you're day-to-day jobbing as a Spark. You're going to find you end up in these awkward corners where you are just trying to make the best of things. And yeah, it's just a case of getting it done, making sure it's serviceable, safe, as neat and tidy as possible. But you're never going to get those Instagram perfect boards on every single install. You're just not. The fixed in rail on this was very helpful as well, so that was nice to have that secured and been able to be confident that the RCBOs were actually on the buzz bar. Obviously you can get the little dentist type mirrors if you haven't got those. Boddingtons do a VDE version that I've seen, so you can do that, and you can look. In this application there is no chance I am seeing the bottom of those RCBOs with the cupboard there, so I would have needed a mirror if it wasn't for this board. You can see there I'm just starting to dress away the CPCs now, so I've got all of the line and neutrals in as tidily as possible. That's the beauty of numbering the cables, so I can now come back through and pop the CPCs away to try and make it look a little bit tidier than if it was just put together one at a time. You end up with your CPCs stuck around your neutral fly leads or other such nonsense, so this is the way I approach it. And again, you can see me pushing the number tags on every single CPC to the top, so we know exactly which each one is. And when I come to do the testing on this, it's going to make my life easier, and the same for the next person following me as well. Having those conductors numbered is really very useful when you're trying to do your R1, R2s, for example. You see I'm just getting those dressed away, and it's sort of coming together quite nice, really. Obviously if I'd have had better access to this, I probably could have made it look a little bit smarter, but in the circumstances I'm quite happy with that. The tails on this one I wasn't going to go to the trouble of replacing, because I would have had to dug into the wall space, so that I think they actually flip into the ceiling space and then drop down the cavity. So I'm just leaving those in. There's nothing wrong with them, they're perfectly serviceable, and as you saw earlier on, we've got an 80 amp main fuse, so we're happy enough with that. There is an intention to have an EV charge point put onto this installation, so obviously when that happens we can look at perhaps upgrading those tails at that time, because we're going to be dropping our cable around and outside to the garage at the front of the house anyway. So you can see I've got all those CPCs in now. That's me with the torque driver, so this is the digital weir torque driver. And as I showed you at the start of this video, the torque values are given on the buzz bar cover. I'm just going over all of the RCBOs and main switches first, making sure I get those set nicely. I've gone off and adjusted the driver now. I'm setting it to a different value so I can go across the earth and neutral bars, and you can see me just doing that now as well. Making sure they're all nice and tight and torqued down to the correct values. Really important that you do this. The manufacturers state what they want. So this is the finished product. You can see that it's reasonably tidy. I've tried to leave enough on the cable so that they can be pulled out and worked on safely. Everything is numbered and labelled, so that should make the job of the next person a little bit easier. You can see I've pulled off the tags on the neutral fly leads, and I will pop new ones on those as well, so they'll all be numbered also. Still to label up the main earth and the bonds, so that's not been done yet. You'll notice there's 4 in there. One is just a looped connection onto the actual metal enclosure itself, and obviously there's the gas water bonds and the main earth, so they just need little labels popping on, and I'll do that after the testing. I'm just going to step down now and you can see exactly what I've been faced with. So I've been up perched on the top of my steps. I've got very achy calf muscles. I'm pleased to have that done and just have the testing to finish off, and yeah, came out okay that. So that's the board with the label chart from M2. I'll go over these with our label printers, but I always like to show the actual labels that come with a kit, and again you can see the QR codes that I mentioned earlier. So these are some of the tools I've been using. This is the Amazon Special Electric Screwdriver. That's actually really decent, good battery life, plenty of torque in it, so it will tighten down and undo your terminals without overgunning anything. You'll note there this Klein nut driver, I will mention that later on in the video as well, but that's a metric one. We've also got the Nipex meter box key. That was a new one. These were both from Loadout, and also my Weira socket set and the Nipex. They're the through connectors from Wago as well. Very useful. These been much needed for quite some time from Wago. It's nice to see those in the kit, and you'll note the torque drivers. So there's the Weir ones and the digital and normal ones. So this is the testing, and you can see I'm just showing a ZS test here with the TIS MFT Pro Plus. So I've got on the socket circuit, and it's just to demonstrate how the TIS works. Again, you'll see the values I've got there, which are what I was expecting based on the dead tests. And we just got some pictures now. So this is the board to give you a better look at it. Again, I could do neater with better access, but I'm happy with that. You can see that there as well. It still needs the fire sealing and final labelling, but yeah, it's not a bad job, I don't think. I'm quite happy with the outcome on that one. Let me know what you think in the comments and tell me what your thoughts are. So I hope you enjoyed that video of installing a consumer unit. The M2 board, as I've said, is pretty decent, especially if you are in a small space and you need something that's going to fit where others might not. Just to speak about these, because I didn't realise this, that there is an imperial version and a metric version. I looked all over for the metric one. I did show this in the video and briefly mentioned it, but Loadout is the only place I could find it to get it where you've got your metric bits on there. I've got the imperial one because I've got an old Land Rover myself, and there's loads of imperial little nuts on there, which is very annoying. So I got that really to help with that, but you know, I was looking for a metric one. We ended up with the Airwin ones, which are a budget variant, and yeah, it was nice to find this. This works absolutely spot on, and yeah, it's going to be one of my go-to tools in the bag now, I think, for the next few months. So I just thought I'd mention that if you are looking for one yourself. I have shared it on Twitter, and a couple of people have gone off and got themselves one. But Loadout, which is Mike Page, Residual Current from Instagram, for those of you who follow him on there, I'm sure you're already well aware. Otherwise, thank you for watching. If you've got any comments on the install, let me know. Fairly straightforward one in terms of the wiring that was there, as we discussed, but awkward because of where it was. So I made my best on that one, as always. It's not a work of art, but it's decent, serviceable, well labelled, and the next person to go to that, you know, should be able to get through it without too many issues. Otherwise, thank you for watching. Thumbs up, thumbs down, and I'll see you on the next one.